This movie only illustrates the simulation results for the flow and effluent movement in the top water layer. During the 22nd hour, sewage effluent discharge commences. This can be seen in the picture as colored dots. At this point, the main color is blue, indicating uncontaminated water. Different colors are used to indicate different sewage effluent concentrations. As the tide shifts to flood, effluent gets into the bay. During the early part of the flood tide, effluent initially spreads from the bay entrance in a funnel-like shape. As the flood tide progresses, most of the effluent moves along the west side of the bay because the channel in this area is relatively deep. Especially after the maximum flood, water pushed into the bay starts to generate a large circulation within the bay. The large flood tide is now followed by a small ebb. Water from the bay is withdrawn evenly near the entrance, including both clean and contaminated water, leaving some contaminated water behind. Now this small ebb tide is followed by a small flood, which is too small to carry much contaminated water back into the bay. During ebb tide, a large circulation forms just outside the bay, trapping contamination near the proposed outfall. Yellow appears near the outfall, representing a concentration of effluent above 2,000 milligrams per liter, followed by red and pink, which are between 500 and 2,000, and blue-green and green, which are between 35 and 500. At the beginning of the next large flood tide, the highly contaminated water accumulated during the ebb tide is forced into the bay. Now a small ebb tide starts again, and water in the bay is moving slowly from all directions toward the exit. This process effectively mixes the contaminated water eastward in the bay. Here, the simulation again shows the occurrence of flood tide. During the flood tide, concentrations are higher on the western side of the bay. Here we see that the ebb tide begins to increase concentrations near the outfall.